We are on the road to, well, not WrestleMania, but to Crown Jewel and Survivor Series. And to do that, we need to go into the FastLane, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, FastLane 2023 match card and predictions is the stream for you here today on the channel. Myself will be joined by the one and only NXSteve in a couple of moments' time. But there are 5 matches on this show at the time of recording, including a last man standing match. We've got a number of multiple tag team matches, and of course, the Women's Championship is on the line also. So without further ado, if you're not aware of the matches, here they are. So there you have it there. And without further ado, then let's call him in, the one, the only, Mr. NXSteve in the house. How are you doing, my good friend?
Very good, buddy. It's been a very exciting week for wrestling in general. And yeah, Fastlane's coming up quick. And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with this one. Like I said, it's a very exciting 2 weeks in wrestling.
Absolutely, indeed. Now, just to put everyone's mind at ease, I know, according to most of the world, that we drive on the wrong side of the road, but don't worry, our predictions will be on the right direction when it comes to this stream. So you've got nothing to panic about when it comes to that. And NXT, I promise the jokes will only get worse from here. But certainly, Fastlane, you said, an exciting period in wrestling right now. For this show, only 5 matches at the time of recording, as we said a moment ago. But what are your excitement levels for this show coming up this Saturday?
I'm actually quietly confident this could be a really good show. I hate to say it because I always jinx myself, but again, the idea of Seth versus Shinsuke Nakamura, the last one was good. Hopefully they can top it and go even one better. The triple threat with all the ladies is going to be exciting. And even the fact that we're getting a tag team match with John Cena and LA Knight, it's a weird dynamic. We'll get into it more as we talk about it. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a solid match.
Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, John Cena returning to the ring for the first time since WrestleMania. So that's a big deal within itself. Obviously being proclaimed the greatest of all time. LA Knight, of course, being the tag team partner. Of course, you know, that we're trying to get him over massively with all the audience right now. Well, he's doing a great job of it on his own, let's be fair. But now being endorsed with John Cena, being in a main event program on SmackDown alongside the Bloodline, regardless of the fact Roman's not involved, this is still massive for LA Knight. We'll be talking about that more in a couple of minutes. But I agree with you. Excitement levels, I'm quietly confident this show is going to deliver as well on the night. There are quite a few big hitters actually lined up for this show as well, despite the fact we don't have a Roman Reigns. But I think if I had to score out of 10 my excitement levels right now, I'm going to go with 7. Yeah, it's the low end of excitement, but certainly I think that, like you said, this potentially could be like an 8, perhaps even an 8.5 by the end of the night. So what would be your number you'd give out of 10 just before we go on to what match we'd want to see most?
I think that's a fair judgment, 7 to 8, depending on how good the quality of the matches are. They're there. They can happen. It's just a case of hopefully they can deliver. If it sticks to a 5-match card, that means that we're looking to give each of these matches some decent time. So it's coming off the back of No Mercy last weekend, which was a really good show. Hopefully, like I said, we get the same thing this weekend with Fastlane.
Absolutely, indeed. And what match are you most looking forward to?
I think it's going to have to be Seth versus Shinsuke. I think the story going into it, there's so much to come out of it, depending on what the result is.
You know, I was actually really tempted to say the same match, and I've actually really enjoyed the story that's been built from the beginning to now with this one. But there is one match that I feel to myself feels the most unpredictable of the entire show. And usually, when a match for me, I'm torn on the result of what I think is going to happen. That usually intrigues me the most. So the match I'm actually most looking forward to is Judgment Day versus Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. I think that match is quite an exciting prospect. The fact that Cody wasn't really in the storyline, it seemed, until just recently. The fact that Jey Uso, the whole controversy of him going to Monday Night Raw has caused, well, a friction with a number of superstars, and the idea as well of the Judgment Day, is there friction? Isn't there friction? Will they lose titles? Dom lost the title. He regained the title. There's a lot of twists and turns with that right now. And for me, I think that it could be a fun recipe of what I think will lead to Survivor Series and will lead to War Games. But we'll go more into that into match 2 for sure. Of course, Seth versus Shinsuke will be our main event match on this stream. But before we do go into what will be the first match on the stream, we're going to just say hello to our chat very quickly. We'll say hello to Kine. Kine is first. Good to see him in the house and hope you are doing well, Kine. And as well, we've got Pierre in house as well. He's saying hi to us as well. Hope you're doing well, Pierre. Thank you for checking out the stream. And also got another comment coming flying in as well. It's funny how on this October month, many free agent wrestlers are changing companies. Brian Pillman Jr. from AEW to NXT. Of course, that is with the WWE banner. Of course, he's been teased as well with the vignettes as well on NXT over I think it was a week or so ago. They're not No Mercy. We had Jade Cargill, of course, been signed to WWE. Yes, absolutely. We'll be talking about Jade Cargill in the stream as well. And we've got Mariah May, of course, leaving Stardom to go to either AEW or WWE. And of course, let's not forget, we do have Adam Copeland, of course, who's now gone to AEW. A big signing for them. Pierre, as well as to say, Kyrie was saying we'll be going to WWE as well. Also mentioned about Adam Copeland. Sammy Callahan potentially could be leaving Impact Wrestling as well. His deal is up with that company. It's been interesting to see where he does end up at. Russell Boom in the house. What's up, guys? We're doing very well. Thank you. Hope you are keeping well also. And a shout out to Eric Douglas as well. Join us in the chat as well. Hope you're doing well, Eric, and hope you get involved with those predictions nice and early. But without further ado, NXT, I think we've caught up with the chat. We've started talking about this show, but how about we get into actual territory where we make some predictions?
Go for it.
I'll tell you what, there's no better way to start it off than with the tag team match, the greatest of all time, John Cena, along with L.A. Knight going against the Bloodline. Of course, Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa will be representing on this show. Paul Heyman, of course, will be in the corner as well of the Bloodline. And of course, there's lots of interesting dynamics when it comes to this, but we'll quickly go with what the story brings to this first before we go into opinions on how things have been playing out. Obviously, Jimmy Uso wanted nothing to do with the Bloodline, despite costing Jey Uso at SummerSlam. But as time has kind of gone on, he had his confrontation with John Cena when he returned. He kind of got his butt handed to him as well. And then he was told that he's only out of the Bloodline when they say he's out of the Bloodline. And then very quickly, he pretty much said he would be part of the Bloodline himself moving forward. This led to John Cena having more problems with the Bloodline after that because, of course, Jimmy Uso wanted to get the revenge. AJ Styles was in the picture at the same time. And, of course, the Bloodline took AJ Styles out of the picture for Fastlane. Originally, a tag team match was going to be John Cena and Styles versus the Bloodline. Now, instead, John Cena was looking for a tag team partner. Originally, LA Knight was supposed to answer on the evening, if you believe the dirt sheets. But, of course, COVID stopped him for a week. But, of course, the next week, he did come out to make it safe for John Cena, sign that contract. And if we remember, John Cena and LA Knight were linked together at Payback, John Cena being the special guest referee for LA Knight's victory over The Miz. So there were lots of twists and turns of how this has led into where we've got to. But the big question is, how excited are we for it?
I mean, the dynamic of a tag team match is always fun for me. My biggest issue is actually the story narrative, because it wasn't too long ago that we had LA Knight being annoyed and upset with John Cena when he was officiating his match between him and The Miz. So I need context, really. It kind of doesn't make sense. I know we know why, obviously, AJ Styles, that they haven't picked AJ Styles, they've gone with LA Knight. But that's the one thing I suppose it's obviously a niggling thing for me, but it's the one thing that I don't really get. But John Cena is the ever-present thorn in the side of the Bloodline. He doesn't seem to go away. So it's you sit there and think, like, what more can John Cena possibly do to annoy the Bloodline? But I think with this one, this is going to be more a case of what happens to Jimmy coming out of this match, because I think that they're trying to push him so much at the minute, like on par with Jay, that he's going to be the focal point of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think that Jimmy Uso does hold all the keys here, because when it comes to him coming back into the Bloodline, rather than being someone that's in the background, he's been taking the microphone off Paul Heyman quite regularly, hasn't he? He's been kind of making himself very loud, very clear, almost being so disruptive to the point that he's actually probably hampering some Bloodline plans rather than actually helping the situation at this point. It's going to be interesting to see what that will lead to when Roman eventually comes back. But I think that leads to a question, really. Jimmy Uso being back in the Bloodline, of course, after leaving the Bloodline just a few months ago, the big twist after Night of Champions. Of course, Jey Uso was the one that went on to have the championship match after Jimmy was taken out. He was frightened that Jey Uso would turn into Roman Reigns, so that's why he cost him at SummerSlam, told him he loved him, but of course that led to the friction there. It's an interesting dynamic of how we got from where we were to where we are now, because Jimmy's almost ready to just fall back in line, it feels, and I'm not so sure why that is. Is that because of the fact that maybe Jay super kicked him and put him out, and then he stepped up to John Cena, didn't succeed. He stepped up to AJ Styles in the singles match, didn't succeed. Is he realizing that perhaps he can't get the job done on his own?
I think maybe that's the arc they're going for when it comes to him. If they're planning on going with him versus Jay at Mania, for example, like, he's trying to do what Jay's been doing for 18 months now, and he can't seem to get to the same point as where Jay is. And who knows what they're trying to do. I mean, like, they're the whole bloodline, that whole bloodline thing with the two of them beating Roman and Solo, and then the turn, and it kind of didn't make sense. Like, we was all still a bit confused. I think some people are still confused by how that dynamic is supposed to work. So it's one of these ones where unfortunately we're going to have to wait and see what they're planning on doing. Like I said, the only thing I can possibly think of is some sort of resentment. Like, Jay's been pushed. Jay's had matches against Roman for the unified titles. Do you know what I mean? And it depends on whether Jimmy gets the same opportunities. And like I said, man, it might just be sibling rivalry or sibling spite that Jay's got all these opportunities and Jimmy hasn't.
It could simply be that, and that would be a fine enough narrative, I guess, if that's the direction they're going to go. The other question that comes to mind is Uso versus Uso WrestleMania 40, and that seems to be the big tease match to keep them apart, hence why Jey Uso has gone over to Monday Night Raw for the meantime. They'll probably wait for the right opportunity to bring Jay back over the SmackDown, although he will be under the SmackDown roof this Friday, actually, with Cody Rhodes, which will be interesting enough to see if there'll be any interactions with Jimmy and Jay on that show. But however, the question I would say is that a lot of people were quite lukewarm about the idea of an Uso versus Uso match. We've talked on this stream previously, and both have said that as well. We said we needed a bit more to get invested. Does it naturally feel more important that Jimmy being in the bloodline, that this match matters more? Because without the bloodline, Jimmy was just Jimmy. It feels though now Jimmy is at least establishing a bit of a character, a bit of a noisy wild child in the bloodline at this moment, and perhaps maybe that angle maybe just is enough to get people more invested than if it was just, well, now it's Jay versus Jimmy, no bloodline involved.
Only time will tell this one, because I think if you give, like I said, depending on what the narrative is and they're going with, like, if they give Jimmy enough time to build himself up, most people imagine that their next interaction isn't going to be until the Rumble, which will be the starting point for this feud. And depending on how they book it between Rumble and Mania, if that's what they want to do, they've got like 2.5 months, 3 months, however long, to really accelerate the story at that point. And again, I think with Jimmy being part of the bloodline, it kind of makes sense, because especially like with the narrative I just said, if they're trying to go with he's trying to replicate what Jay's already done, it kind of makes sense for him to be there, because that's what Jay did for the last 18 months. He stepped up. He's been main event Jay. So Jimmy trying to do the same thing kind of makes sense. But like, if they go from Rumble as the kicking point to this rivalry for Mania, it needs to accelerate hard. It needs to be a case of don't do what they normally do and have them in tag matches against each other or something like that, or force them to tag together. That one's okay, but just keep them away from each other in ring wise. It needs to be a case of that they don't get hold of each other until they're actually in that match at Mania.
Interesting. So, I mean, obviously, I don't want to jump ahead of the gun here, but obviously, this say hypothetically Cody and Jey Uso won the tag titles this Saturday. You wouldn't recommend doing a match against Solo Sikoa and Jimmy Uso before WrestleMania. You'd keep them completely apart out of a match until WrestleMania.
Yeah, because I think if you're going to drop the titles and put them on Cody and Jay, I think the next rivalry for them two is Kevin and Sammy, because Kevin obviously has a lot of resentment for Jay. The dynamic with Sammy and Jay and them two basically being brothers, I think is a lot more interesting and is something to tide the four of them over until we get to Rumble season. Jimmy obviously can then go on and do whatever, possibly even have a match against Roman just to say like he had the same opportunities as what Jay got. So it's a good. That's what I think they could do.
It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do. This is why I wanted to do this match first. And for those, spoiler alert, we will do the tag titles second, because I think there's actually the biggest talking points that could come out story-wise with these competitors in these matches. And I've got to say, to give another just an opinion, potentially, or potential opinion of, I've said already a couple of them of why I think Jimmy could be back in the Bloodline. Here's my final one. War Games. I have this idea in mind that if you look right now on Monday Night Raw, it seems you could do easily Judgment Day versus Cody. I think you've got Jay, Sammy, and KO. You could simply do that 4-on-4. But say, for example, Cody gets taken out of the picture. JD McDonough, of course, isn't really part of Judgment Day. You've then got the 3-on-3. Well, if Jimmy's back in the Bloodline and you want to establish this the most dominant stable, we've seen War Games in NXT have 3 versus 3 versus 3. So that could be that dynamic if Roman is going to come back going into Survivor Series, then he has, well, his stablemates backing him up. It's just a suggestion. It's not necessarily going to happen, but it certainly could be something we could keep an eye out for in the future. But certainly, before we get too much off topic, it is interesting with the dynamic of what's going on with Jimmy Uso, but hopefully we'll get more clarity as we move forward. And like you said, time will tell with a lot of what we're seeing. Moving back though over to John Cena, moving on to LA Knight. You mentioned there a couple of moments ago the idea of, well, LA Knight has joined John Cena here. We don't exactly know why. We have a SmackDown to go. Do you reckon we'll get some explanation from LA Knight of why he actually said he would step up and sign that contract on behalf of Cena? Like you said, that payback, there was this slight bit of friction, if you will, between the two of them, but at the same time, there did seem to be that nod of respect. Do you feel that LA Knight kind of accepted that respect and it has that respect back? Therefore, that's why he's not seen as back?
Possibly, but then I'd like to think that it's more the thought process that LA Knight, regardless, will come out on Friday night and turn around and say, win or lose, I want a match against you. You're considered the GOAT. I need to, if I want to raise myself to be like at that peak on the highest level, then I need to go up against the former 16-time world champion. So I think that's the idea coming out of FastLane, is that we will at some point get LA Knight versus John Cena, and it kind of needs to be on the case of that there isn't a heel. It's just more of a respect versus respect thing, which LA Knight really needs to sort of, if they really want to keep pushing him and elevating his level.
It sounds a really good idea if they want to do that. I would not be against that idea whatsoever. So without further ado, I think it's time we get down to predictions, and then we can go to our chat afterwards. NXT, I'm going to let you take this first.
I'm going to go with the Bloodline. I think Jimmy picking up a win here is the more important thing story-wise coming out of the show. I think that regardless of if LA Knight and Cena wins, we can still get an LA Knight-Cena match at some point in the future, and they don't necessarily need the win here.
Interesting. I like it. And do you know, we're going to start off on different sides of the coin. Don't you like it when we don't think the same on these streams? I'm going with John Cena and LA Knight to pick up a win. And here is my reasoning why. John Cena has not won a match in WWE for plural years. I believe his last win in WWE came in 2017. And I think that him being seen as the greatest of all time, his first match back in quite a while, it's a tag team match as well. Despite the fact he doesn't need it, I think that it's going to build up to other matches going forward. And like we said, we've got LA Knight in this position. He's over, like Rover, like I like to say a lot of the time at this particular time. I feel that they do not want to have him in a losing effort. And I think that this is going to lead to John Cena pinning Jimmy Uso on the night, because Solo's not going to be one to let things down. That can lead more friction and ideas into the Bloodline. And I think it will lead to Jimmy Uso challenging John Cena at Crown Jewel. Obviously, there's been speculation that we could get John Cena versus Solo Sikoa at the Royal Rumble if John Cena doesn't stick around that long, of course, with the Hollywood writers ban that's been going on at this particular time. But I'm predicting for Crown Jewel, which I believe currently John Cena is advertised for, John Cena versus Jimmy Uso. And I think Jimmy there can get his win back.
It's a good shout, but I think the dynamic for me doesn't work unless John Cena and LA Knight lose. I mean, John Cena can take losses. I think if they really want to elevate Jimmy and push him to the level, Cena needs to take the pin. It needs to be Jimmy that pins him. And I think that gives LA Knight not really the excuse, but it gives him the chance to say, look, if Jimmy can pin you, then I sure as hell can pin you. And I reckon like we should see how that goes. And they set a match for Crown Jewel. Like I said, it's going to be really interesting because there's so many possibilities coming out of the result of this one.
Absolutely, indeed. Then I think that's what's fun about it. It's not so predictable, this one, especially as we've not actually seen the SmackDown Go Home show. We have nothing to
True.
go off on that with the actual when it comes to the final angle. But without further ado, let's get into our chat and see what they've got to say here. WrestleBoom says, I predict John Cena LA Knight will win. So we've got a win there for the baby faces. Pierre saying, my prediction is that Knight and Cena wins. The next show, Crown Jewel and Saudi, will be John Cena versus Jimmy Uso, and LA Knight versus Solo Sikoa, AJ Styles versus Roman Reigns. Of course, I can definitely see AJ versus Roman at some point in the near future. I believe as well, it has been actually teased on some of the dirt sheets as well that match will happen in the very near future. WrestleBoom's got a couple of fantasy booking ideas. NXSteve, I'm going to let you take the reins first. What would you like to add?
The only thing I was thinking is that obviously it depends on what they want to do going in towards SummerSlam, Survivor Series as well. Like, we still don't know at this point if we're getting War Games, it might just go back to the original 5v5 elimination. It's a case of, it's kind of, my brain's trying to think of like alternative angles and reasons and dynamics, and like some clarity on some of the Survivor Series would really help right about now.
Would be good to know, wouldn't it? Especially as I think they're only going about 2 or 3 weeks build between the show as well after Crown Jewel. But WrestleBoom's fantasy idea is if Roman Reigns wrestles at Crown Jewel, that perhaps maybe John Cena will face Roman Reigns, then Roman Reigns should face AJ Styles or LA Knight at Survivor Series. And an early prediction for 2024 Elimination Chamber, Roman versus Solo. Robbie says, hello guys. He says, hopes we're well. We're doing very well, Robbie. Hope you're doing well also. Of course, a part of We Talk Media, and of course as well, doing the Main Event Wrestling Network. Hope I've got that right, Robbie. You've done your first video, first week of wrestling video that have gone live on the channel earlier this week, including Johnny Gargano's return to WWE. C Nation says, what was the point of Trick Williams win the North American Championship for Dominic Mysterio to actually, well, I'll answer that question very quickly. Obviously, it's not a FastLane question. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, Dom, they want the Judgment Day to keep those titles. I think that's pretty much the gist of it. And I think it's going to play with Trick and Carmelo Hayes further down the line with their story.
Trick was never meant to win the title.
No, that's also true. Yes. And I heard the dirt sheets apparently today suggesting that Mustafa Ali, there was actually plans in place for him up until March of 2024. So for him to be released was very frustrating for their creative. So yeah, that's quite annoying indeed. WrestleBoom actually corrects me. John Cena won a tag team match with KO against Roman and Sammy at the final SmackDown of 2022. That is very true. So I stand corrected on that earlier. Eric Douglas, though, why is Jimmy back in the Bloodline? Obviously, we've gone through great detail already. I would recommend rewinding at this point. We did go on for quite a few minutes on that one. And Robbie says, Cena and Knight a win for me. And Cena just says, Jimmy Uso being back in the Bloodline makes no sense. I do not get it.
Looks like I'm on my own with that one then. No one else seems to be thinking the same logic as me.
Well, they might be indeed. And Cena should never apologize, by the way. Comments are always helpful, always grateful in any way, shape, or form. So feel free to throw them in, and any topic you want, we will do our best to answer them. Even if it's briefly on this particular stream, we will still try and touch upon it. But obviously, try and keep it WWE based for us, as it's a FastLane prediction stream. But we'll keep on in the meantime, and we will move on to what will be match 2, because we've talked about one Uso. So without further ado, let's talk about another one. Let's talk about main event Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes going for the Unified Tag Team Championships against Judgment Day's Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Really looking forward to this. This is the match I'm most looking forward to, mainly because I personally think it's quite unpredictable. To go into the storyline narc with it very quickly, obviously, Cody Rhodes at the Payback show announced that Jey Uso was traded to Monday Night Raw. There will be a superstar traded to SmackDown further down the line. That superstar has not been traded yet. You do wonder if Cody is going to get himself traded over once storylines clear up on his direction on the Raw side, but time will tell with that. But the Judgment Day, of course, have become the tag team champions at Payback. But as we said, there's been friction in amongst the Judgment Day for quite a while now, for a good few months, but they have managed to stay on top as best as they can. And just as we mentioned a minute ago, and I think Dom, C Nation's question about Dom is definitely appropriate when we get into this part of it. Dom lost the North American Championship at No Mercy. He won it back on Tuesday. Of course, all of Judgment Day were a big factor in that happening. But the question is, will they all be a big factor this Saturday in them keeping the championships? Let's not forget, Rhea Ripley was taken off of TV for a couple of weeks after being attacked by returning Nia Jax. And she said when Damian Priest was in charge, well, not everything went to plan. Damian Priest put the blame on Dom for losing his title and saying he's got all of his Is that going to bite him in the bum this Saturday if him and Finn lose the tag straps? We'll have to wait and see. But big question is, NXT, what your feelings with Cody Rhodes and main event Jey Uso versus the Judgment Day? And let's not forget, as a starting talking point, Jey Uso, who'd come to Raw, was wanted as a part of the Judgment Day, but Jey didn't want to join no emo group. What are your thoughts on that?
You are bang on the money. This is the hardest match of the night to call, again, because of circumstances and situations after and what goes down afterwards. Like, I mean, is it a possibility that Jey and Cody take the tag team titles? Then it leaves Finn and Priest without titles, but then Priest also still has that Money in the Bank briefcase, or sorry, Senior in the Bank briefcase. So, there's always a possibility he can cash in at the end of the night. So so Priest could still walk out of a title, but Finn would still be without one. But then if they retain, there's still the whole dynamic of trying to integrate JD into the Judgment Day, whether he actually finally gets a part in there. I mean, the guy is doing so much. I mean, at what point and what else does he have to do before they turn around and go, do you know what? You come into the Judgment Day. You're all right. You're okay. And obviously with Rhea not being off, and they seem like they're falling apart, and it's like it is so hard to call, and it's like my brain is still to this point racking what the outcome's going to be. I'm going to need to listen to you now, because you normally the man of wiseness here. You normally have something smart and something that my brain hasn't thought of. So I'm waiting to hear what you say before I really make my judgment.
Well, I feel under a lot of pressure now to say that I speak smart things on this channel. I'm not sure we go that far, but certainly we'll do my best to try and make some sense of this all. So this is the way I see it. I see that, as I said, this can go either way. Surprise, surprise. I see it as unpredictable. I do see some value in Cody and Jey Uso as the tag team champions. Now, while it may seem as if we're thrown together tag team, like you said earlier on, what does that leave with Sami and KO? What does that leave with the Judgment Day? Does the Judgment Day break up? Do they try and win the titles back? Does it lead to Cody and Jey being able to take on the Bloodline and SmackDown? I'm perhaps more open-minded to that idea than what you said you was earlier. And also that gets Cody a bit of a step closer to get backing into a program of Roman Reigns, which I think is the ultimate goal. If I had to sort of narrow and break it down a little bit, someone needs to go to SmackDown. It is going to be Cody Rhodes. It's going to be Cody. The question is when. I feel that Cody is going to stay on Raw to at least Survivor Series. That's the at least time, because I think Cody will be a part of War Games this year. If I had to predict now, it looks likely it would be the Judgment Day versus Cody, Jey, Sami, and KO, because of the dynamic of Jey, Sami, and KO being in the match will be fascinating. Cody, of course, Dusty's been in so many War Games matches if you go back to the early ones back in the late 80s, so it makes sense for them to do that. They have time to have a Cody and Jey run with the tag titles if they wanted to on Raw and have an interesting dynamic with it. Plus the idea that Cody and Jey go into SmackDown, the draft doesn't mean anything at this point, but certainly it's interesting. With the Judgment Day, I don't think they should break up, and I don't think they will break up yet. And as you said earlier in this stream, there is a potential that Damian Priest still could cash in on the same night, depending on the match order of the show. But I'm going to lead this through to making my prediction. And my first question is, and this is where my words of wisdom, if there is any wisdom, is going to come out. I mentioned Jimmy and Jey are under the roof on the same evening for not the first time now. They're doing it on SmackDown, but they're going to do it for the first PLE. Is Jimmy Uso going to be upset of the idea that Jey Uso could win a tag team championship? That is the question first that I'm going to ask.
That is literally my brain and the cogs in my head were just spinning, thinking like, do you know what? I've just remembered the pair of them are under the same roof. It is a very, very good chance that we get a screwy finish to this and we get some sort of interference by Solo and Jimmy, which ultimately ends up costing them the tag team title match, which means that then Judgment Day would retain.
It is indeed. But what if I was to say to you that maybe Jimmy isn't the one involved in this one? What if it's Drew McIntyre? Drew McIntyre has been an interesting character on Raw as of late. He's not been happy with the fact that Jey Uso has been brought into Raw. The fact is that everyone just forgives him at this particular moment. In fact, Drew has not come to the aid of many people when he says that's what's the babyface thing to do. And when it comes to it, he said that the Bloodline were beating him down. Where was everyone doing the right thing, helping him then? They weren't. So he's left the New Day alone. He's left Jey Uso alone. He's had a match with Jey Uso, which he won, of course, if you remember, which led to the beatdown on the Judgment Day. And of course, he's took issue with Cody Rhodes of bringing Jey Uso back. And of course, if you remember on this week's Raw, he declined Miz TV. And the first thing he very cockily said was, "So what do you guys want to talk about?" Very sort of in a very comedic kind of way. I wonder, because there's been negative talk about Cody for a little while from Drew, and I think it stemmed off Miz TV as well the week before. I have a sneaking suspicion that Drew says he's not that guy, he's not that character, but he does things that just prove that character is coming. And I think in my head we are building to Cody versus Drew, and I think that's going to happen
in a loser
before.
leaves Raw match.
Oh, now that's
the
something.
that's how you get Cody on SmackDown, because someone still has to be traded, and it's a case of it'll be Drew versus Cody. Loser leaves Raw.
I like that idea a lot. I was not going to go that for. See, we wanted the smarts. NXT, it's come from you. It's not come from me. And like, to be fair, like that would be an awesome way to do it. But I thought that match would take place at Crown Jewel. So I thought that in one way, someone is going to cost people here. The Judgment Day obviously have got their members. I think Cody and Jey will find a way to overcome them, especially with Sammy and KO probably being in the house as well. They can fight through the crowd, do that jazz. I think it's someone else that takes it out. And if Jimmy's focus is on something else on that night, perhaps maybe Cena and LA Knight, like we mentioned earlier, I do think Drew might not be happy of the idea that these guys could win tag team gold. And I think it's a wild, bold prediction. I don't know if it necessarily will happen, but I'm going to go all out because there's something going on with Drew McIntyre right now. So I'm going to predict the Judgment Day to pick up the win. And I think Drew's the reason.
I'm going to be the same as you, and I'm going to say Judgment Day retain, because I think if we're brainstorming here and we're going with Drew versus Cody, loser leaves Raw, I think that plays into Survivor Series, and we get Judgment Day versus KO, Sammy, Jimmy, and someone else, maybe Drew. I don't know. And then Drew does a complete ultimate heel turn at that point and betrays all three of them and costs them the War Games match against the Judgment Day, just as a crazy shot there, man. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to go exactly the same way as you. Like, my brain is just like, it's so complicated, and it's too late to be trying to work out dynamics and stuff. But yeah, man, I'm going to go the same as you. I'm going to go Judgment Day retain.
Time zone is not kind to us, ladies and gentlemen. We do these streams this time of the evening, unfortunately. But what we will say is that the comments are gone. Well, I've not even read any of the comments that have come through. We've got 18 of them sitting there, nice and pretty, wait to bring up on our screen in a couple of seconds. It shows there's a lot of dynamic with this match, but I will just ultimately say that this match, I think, is the most unpredictable. I've said that already. It can go either way, this one. I'm looking forward to seeing how it will play out. And let's go into the comments. We've got Richard in the house. Of course, Richard, it's a prediction, not a spoiler. He's hoping that Zoe Stark will help Auska. I don't see that one happening by any chance, unfortunately. Cena says NXT is WWE base lol, but I know what you mean. You're saying keep it main roster base. Not well. If you can. It says, I think that this will be match of the night, says Russell Boom. I think you could be onto something there as well. Sination says, Cody and Jey have a lot of tag team victories to earn this opportunity. Yeah, I see where you're coming from with that, but two big names, and it's WWE. You don't need to do that. I was saying that AEW had Orange Cassidy and Hook going for a number one contendership, who didn't have any tag team wins. So
do you remember when rankings were a thing on AEW? How long has it been since we saw a ranking table from AEW? But hey, at least we didn't get a championship contenders match when it comes to Cody and Jey.
It could be worse, like you say. It could be worse. Daz is in the house. Are we doing well? Daz says, "Pick up who do you think will be after Nakamura for Seth if he wins again?" It's a big question at this point because Seth may not win. And to be honest, I would actually turn around and say at this moment, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, Drew's an obvious name that you could throw out there. It's a case of maybe even Bobby, depending on things that happen. It could be anyone really. There's a couple of names, but there's no one that automatically sticks out.
No, it's going to be interesting to see what they'll do with that, depending on what happens. Maybe they do a third match. Who knows? Eric, of course, gives us the Liv Morgan updates when we need them. Liv Morgan set to be at the Grand Marshal at Rover 400 if we like NASCAR. Not a NASCAR follower, but I'm aware of that. It's very popular over there in the States, and definitely be a good plug for her and for WWE. WrestleBoom says, I think the Judgment Day win because thanks to Drew McIntyre will turn heel and it will set up Drew versus Cody at Crown Jewel. WrestleBoom thinks alike there. Eric says, do you think JD McDonough officially joins Judgment Day? Hopefully one day. I mean, like you said, he's done everything to do so, but it could be at the expense of Damian Priest because they seem to be the two that are locking heads because Rhea Ripley actually saw logic in JD McDonough's explanation this past week on Raw, which Damian eventually accepted.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how long they plan on keeping the Judgment Day together. It depends on when Priest is going to cash in that Money in the Bank contract. There's so many ways they can go around it. Like, I'm hoping that we get some sort of story with the five of them for at least a little while. I'd like to see it, I don't know, culminate in the fact that maybe the fallout doesn't come until maybe Damian successfully cashes in. Who knows? So, yeah, it's going to be fun to see, but it's like, I'd hope so that he gets in.
Hopefully at some stage. Ryan actually asked the question, why does WWE not want Damian to cash in while Seth is hurting? I guess they have a bigger storyline for further down the line, Ryan. That'd be the first one I would say.
Again, yeah, it depends on the narrative arc, whether they want Priest to wait. Like I said, there's so many things going on at the minute. It just hurts your brain trying to think of who, when, why, what, and how.
Absolutely. If you take storyline logic out of it and you take, I suppose, character logic, what maybe normal logic, this would be the right time for Damian to want to cash in. Although Damian did look at the idea of cashing in the night after or 2 nights after Payback. Maybe Judgment Day is keeping an eyeball on the situation, and maybe this could be the night that Damian actually cashes in Money in the Bank.
Like I said, we've discussed it a minute ago. The fact if the Judgment Day don't retain the titles here and Priest goes on to win, like cashing at the end of the night, Priest still walks out at the end of the night with a title and Finn's left rubbing his, sticking his thumbs, rubbing his thumbs together because he doesn't got nothing to do.
Maybe Finn and JD going for those tag team titles afterwards instead. We'll have to wait and see. C Nation says it's great to see Jey Uso going for the tag team championships with a different tag team partner. You have to agree with that there. Absolutely. WrestleBoom saying Judgment Day and Drew McIntyre versus Seth, Cody, Jay, KO, and Sammy at War Games. I mean, that certainly makes 5-on-5 as well, the traditional Survivor Series way. That could be a thing. We'll have to wait and see, WrestleBoom.
If Cody hasn't left by then, if he's already been kicked out because the loser leaves Raw match.
You never know. You never. They could drag this out if they wanted to, though. I mean, I don't think there's a December show, but certainly perhaps Royal Rumble season could be the place it happens.
There isn't one between November and Rumble.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting what they'll do. DIY, maybe the next Undisputed Tag Team Champions of C Nation. Certainly can see them being a contender. That's for sure. We hope so indeed. WrestleMania thinks that Damian Priest will cash in Money in the Bank at the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. Those will be 2 big places to do so if he was to cash in then. C Nation says that Drew McIntyre is a tweener and he has a lot of good points. I actually think that Drew also has a lot of good points of the things he's saying.
Yeah, that's why I said that if we get this tweener Drew that's just annoyed at Cody, loser leaves at Crown Jewel, then we get a 4-on-4 at War Games, and then Drew completely turns on Jay, Sammy, and Kevin. It costs them the match. They end up losing to the Bloodline, and then Drew goes full heel.
There you go. There we go. Alyssa says, see, Swerve, Cody, and Jey win the titles. And do you know what? It is as distinct. It's a strong possibility it could happen. We certainly don't rule it out. We've said it's the most unpredictable match, this one. Eric says, what if it's a returning Randy who screws Jay and Cody? Remember, he remembers Jay was the one to put him on the shelf. I mean, of course, Randy Orton, if he was to return, would certainly make sense in that way because he's a Raw superstar to my knowledge as well. But of course, I mean, Jay's got a lot going on right now. So for me, I would actually turn and say I don't think it will happen, but certainly I can see the logic in Eric's comment.
I think if they were going to do it, it'd be more Randy versus Cody. I think that's more of a money match at the minute. You're seeing them two in the ring together.
I mean, it's a match I'm desperate to see if and when Randy makes that return. WrestleBoom says, I can see a Swerve Finn Balor being kicked out at Judgment Day at the Royal Rumble or after Survivor Series. I suppose it would depend really on if Judgment Day were to lose the Survivor Series. There certainly would be a lot of finger pointing if they didn't win War Games. Numiko is in the house.
It's Sorry, yeah, it's that or when they lose them tag team titles. I think there's two really big deciding factors.
Absolutely. And a big shout out to Noob. Hope Noob as well, by the way. And I love this suggestion here. I believe Trick Williams might cost Judgment Day those tag team titles.
I very much doubt it. I mean, don't get me wrong, it'd probably get a great pop from someone somewhere in Florida, but I can't see that happening, unfortunately.
The thing that makes me really like that suggestion is it would give logic as to why Trick won the title and lost the title very, very quickly.
Actually.
So that would work really well. And obviously, if he's got Carmelo with his side as well, Trick Williams was on Raw this week as well, so introducing to a wider audience. So I'd see the logic in Noob's comment there. Do I predict it? No, but you know what? I wouldn't be against it.
Yeah, no, it does. It does make a lot of sense, but then, like, I think it depends on what they do with NXT next week, because obviously, all guns blazing next week. So I don't know, but it'd be a good shout. I can't very much see it happening.
No, absolutely not. Well, we'll see if it will or won't. Cody versus Drew, lose these Raw match. It should be at Survivor Series. See the logic in that one. Totally see the logic. Cena says that Drew cost Cody and Jey Uso. And a fun fact, they were a tag team, Cody and Drew McIntyre. They were tag team champions before. And I agree. Wasn't that around 2010, C Nation? Let me know if I'm right or wrong with that logic there. I think it was around 2010, maybe 2011. C Nation says, I don't think JD McDonough will ever officially be a member of Judgment Day. He'll probably start teaming with Finn Balor with the Judgment Day. WrestleBoom says Seth versus Drew at Royal Rumble WrestleMania 40. And Sinister says Finn Balor will form a tag team with JD McDonough after it is over. And if Randy Orton should not return as a heel. And no, he'll probably get a big babyface pop at the start. And Sinister, just to finish it off, it says it was 2010 that Drew and Cody were tag team champions. So I think we've covered all the bases there. We're 40 minutes in. We've talked about the two matches that I think probably would take the longest to talk about, certainly the most talking points with them. We're going to move on now to what I think the rest of the card does provide talking points, but certainly is going to provide a bit of input for our chat as well. We're going to start off with a 6-man tag team match. The LWO, Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar, and what looks like Joaquin Wilde against Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. Well, pretty much with this one, Rey Mysterio, of course, has become a United States champion. It was Santos Escobar's dream, I believe, to take on Rey Mysterio for the championship, to have the dream match against his mentor. That match was accepted. Of course, before that, Rey and Santos beat the Street Profits in a tag team match. And of course, Bobby Lashley then, when he's had this sort of growing build with the Street Profits, kind of turned on them a little bit, kind of said they were lacking that killer instinct. If they wanted to get to that next level, they needed to do what Bobby Lashley needed them to do. Otherwise, they could go back to sitting in catering. We've seen now since then the Street Profits, they upset the apple cart a little bit, upsetting that match with Rey Mysterio and Santos. Well, after Rey Mysterio and Santos Escobar, I should say. And yeah, I mean, to be fair, we've got the 6-man tag team match now put together. It should be fun. But I must admit, it's the match I'm least looking forward to on the show. I think probably because I think it's quite obvious who's winning here. But I will ask very quickly your thoughts on Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits as a dynamic and how they've been booked so far.
I mean, put it this way: I think if LWO win this, I think it's really pointless of ever putting the Street Profits with Bobby Lashley. Put it that way, but it's good. I suppose it's kind of like a slow build to a heel turn for the Street Profits, and it's kind of like Bobby's encouraging them to look, you got to do whatever you got to do to get the W, no matter what, regardless of whether it's clean, whether it's dirty. If you want to win, you want that payday, you want to be on every pay-per-view, you want tag team gold, then you need to do whatever you need to do. It is a good dynamic. It's just, I think I don't know, for me, it might just be the way they're going about it. I presume after this weekend, we're going to have full heel Street Profits after this match. It's going to be I reckon it's going to be out and out chaos. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point by the weekend, this is an added stipulation to this, I don't know, no holds barred or something like that. And I think it'd just be a great way for the Street Profits to just completely go wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because they came back in, and obviously this group was meant to have been a heel from minute one when it was brought together, but people kept cheering them. No matter where they went, they were cheered, and no matter what they did to try and be heels, people still gave them the praise. Oh, yeah, it's kind of like edgy baby faces. We like this. It's like, no, they're heels. You're meant to boo them. So what can we do to get them to be booed? And I think this is why, because I was at first thinking to myself, it's really stupid the Street Profits losing this match to Rey and Santos. But then I watched it play out and I thought to myself, actually a small stroke of genius, because the Street Profits lost because they didn't have the cutting edge that Bobby Lashley wanted. And obviously Bobby Lashley cheating in the match got people to boo Lashley, and Lashley saying, well, Street Profits, you're being adored by the fans. I can get other people that can play your role. So Bobby's being the bad guy. People booing Bobby. And then the next week, or the same night even, I think the Street Profits showing, well, hang on, no, we do have that cutting edge. And people went, well, hang on, you're not supposed to be doing that. And now you're not doing something that we like that's edgy. We like them in the ring. We're going to boo you now. And all of a sudden, WWE's starting to think, we're going to get our way with this. And hopefully going forward, like you said, now we can start seeing what this group is meant to be. Because should they be losing matches? No. But they needed to do something because it wasn't going the direction they wanted. With the LWO on the flip side, and this is why I'll probably will change the topic a little bit, but NXSteve, please go back if you want to. But Rey and Santos, that is a thing that is, a great match for them. I think eventually we will get a heel turn somewhere further down the line. I think a loss in this match will probably not help this group, because my prediction will be Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. But I think that's a longer term play rather than a short term play. So what will be your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the LWO for me still haven't done anything of credibility since they've been formed, apart from sell a hell of a lot of merch. That's it, really. Ray's gone on to win the United States title. Like, I'm desperate to see Santos Escobar back as a heel again, because just seeing him be all happy and cheerful is like, I'm used to NXT, like Legado del Fantasma, and like they were great. Do you know what I mean? Kidnapping people and then like betraying. I can't even remember who Santos was against. Oh, it was Drake Maverick. Do you know what I mean? It was such great storytelling, but this was like when Bobby Roode got called up, and Bobby, the first thing they do is interview Bobby in the ring, and he's all smiles and he's all happy and he's a face, and I'm like, I'm sorry, have you missed the last like year that he's been on NXT and what he's been doing? So for them, it's just a case of they need to get the heel turn done with them quicker than what needs to be. They need to go back to what the WCW version was. They were a heel faction, and that's what they need to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that that's certainly what we'd like to see going forward with them. I think that, look, I mean, the thing is with this match, I originally thought, because Dragon Lee was sitting there in the audience when this match was going on, he didn't like the idea of the beatdown after the match as well. Was pulled away by security. A bit me wondered if Dragon Lee ends up being an honorary member for the LW on this night, but as that's not advertised for this particular moment, although I said we do have one more SmackDown to go. According to that graphic, which I will pull it up again just very, very quickly. If you look on screen, it looks like Joaquin Wilde is the one that's going to be involved in the match. Of course, Raul Mendoza is there in the background. It could always be either or, but if you've got one of them two in this 6-man tag team match, that's the person that's eating the pinfall. It just makes the most sense. The story of Rey and Santos can go on for another day. Lashley Street Profits can start their reign of dominance. Surely that makes sense here, and that's the way to go.
Absolutely. I mean, but let's be honest, I'm sick of seeing Bobby in the United States title scene, man. Like, the guy is so, like, he's such a big character and such a big draw that the US title really does seem below him at this point. But hey, if that's what they want to do, if that's the goal after this is that Bobby takes that US title, sure, go ahead, man. It might even be the precipice of what they need to get the LWO to turn on Rey, and then they go back to being a heel faction. So I'm all game for it. But in case I didn't say it before, my prediction is the same as you. I'm going to go with the Street Profits and Bobby Lashley to win. In fact, I'm going to go with them to absolutely destroy the LWO.
Yeah, I think destroy could be a good term for it as well there. But you mentioned very quickly there, just before we go to the chat, Bobby Lashley potentially going for the United States Championship after this. Could you see that being a match for Crown Jewel then? Rey Mysterio versus Bobby Lashley?
I could, but it's a case of it's not the match I want to see Bobby in. But hey, look at it this way: if he ain't taking roll-up pins, I'm fine with it, man. Like, as long as I don't see Bobby Lashley take another roll-up pin, I'm sure I'll be okay.
There we go, indeed. There. Well, let's go into the comments in the meantime and see what everyone has got to say here. And we've got a hot take here from WrestleBoom. I think come from the last match, just too late, but we'll get it in there anyway. Carmel Hayes and Trick Williams will dethrone the Judgment Day, or should dethrone Tony D'Angelo and Stacks. And Trick Williams is over the NXT fans, and WWE decides to give him a 3-day reign. I have a feeling Mustafa Ali was going to get a 3-day reign. And do you know what? You could be right, C Nation. Unfortunately, we'll never know. Noob says, better yet, make it a handicap match for Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits against the LWO. Make it 4-on-3. I still think that it's an unfair advantage. The LWO doesn't have enough members, in my opinion. They need more guys.
You're right. Bobby probably is the size of Ray, Joaquin, and Real all in one. Do you know what I mean? So essentially, it's actually 3-on-2. I think is the more fair assessment. But hey, here's an idea for you. Why don't you just throw Bianca Belair in that situation? Have a 4-on-4 and get Zelina Vega involved as well.
Ooh. You never know. She'll be back at some point in the near future. We'll have to wait and see what will happen. WrestleBoom thinks that the Almighty Profits, like that name, will win because Wesley helps Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits to win. Well, Wesley did walk off of NXT. That would be a way to bring him back in.
I'm actually really excited by the fact that someone said Wesley, and that really is an exciting prospect, man, because Wesley's great, man. That's really exciting. I'm actually hoping that happens.
I would like that as well because I struggle to think where he would fit in on a Raw and a SmackDown. But what I would say is the guy is so talented and he's been unbelievable in the last calendar year of his matches. But usually, for me, has been some of the highlights of takeovers, but NXT specials these days we call them. But yeah, it would be interesting to see. I mean, I'm not against that dynamic at all. I'd be quite into that. Alyssa says Cody Rhodes or The Rock face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Cody deserves moments. Absolutely, Cody deserves the moment. The Rock also, though, if they can do that match, it's money. So, I mean, as I've said previously, and I'll keep it brief, and NXT, tell me if you agree or disagree. I think you do both matches, one on night one and one on night two. That's the way to get around it.
That's the dream scenario.
That is indeed there. WrestleBoom says, I think Rey Mysterio, Santos, Escobar, and Dragon Lee versus Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits there was suggested there from WrestleBoom. Still could happen on SmackDown tomorrow. Calling it right now, Bobby Lashley will beat Rey Mysterio for the US title, and then LA Knight will beat Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania 40. Love that shout there, WrestleBoom. Me and you might be on the same wavelength. That video will eventually come out of WrestleMania 40 one day. It keeps getting delayed. WrestleMania, I think I said that last PLE as well. LWO will turn on Rey Mysterio after he loses the US Championship. I could see that as well, especially because Santos then couldn't win it from Rey. Say, for example, they wanted to have one more match.
Didn't their match in the screwy finish as well?
It was kind of like a roll-up, wasn't it? It wasn't like
there interference though? Like, didn't someone come out and play interference? Because I think that actually kind of makes sense then. Because I think if you have Rey, if their match had interference, Santos doesn't get the correct win. Like, he doesn't get a fair match for that US title, and then Rey loses it. They can't then go back and redo that match and have it as a fair contest. So it kind of makes sense there that they're going to go with that dynamic to have the heel turn.
Would make sense indeed. Chat, remind us, unfortunately, because there's like 40 matches in a wrestling week, so it's quite easy to let a finish slide if you want. And the rest, yeah. All 39 of them, apart from the one you're talking about, seems to go vanish at that point. Cena says, is NXT still a developmental brand? It's hard to tell what the main roster superstars on the show. Well, at this particular moment, NXT is sort of becoming the third brand again, I think is the way Nick Khan described it. But what we must keep in mind is that TV deal is the important thing that's coming up. They're looking to renegotiate it. SmackDown has got the big deal now, 1.4 billion, which is higher than what Fox gave for SmackDown 4 years ago at this point, but of going on to 5 years. NXT is looking to get the big bucks once again. And what better way to say, look, let's get that big TV deal if you can turn around and say, look, we'll give you John Cena, we'll give you Becky Lynch, here's the Judgment Day. Oh, you want Cody Rhodes for a week? You can have Auska as well. And if you can beat AEW to put the cherry on top, that tells you everything you need to know, because $1 billion just got given from Warner Brothers to AEW for a TV deal as well. So that would give NXT the leverage to get that too.
Imagine how much money they would be making now if they'd have been doing this 4 years ago in 2019. If they'd have had these stars coming back down, someone finally in creative or in like higher ups is finally gone, you know what, we've got no excuse not to treat this as a third brand. But then it still is their developmental, to be fair. Point in case this week, they have the women's breakout tournament just started. So again, it's 50 of one, half of another. But yeah, like, imagine, like I said, if they'd have done this 4 years ago, how much money they'd be getting for that show on a contract renewal.
Very true. And I don't make an argument that I think sometimes when you look at NXT now, it's more developmental now than what it was in its glory times. Think of the likes of when you used to have, like, you know, a Kevin Steen who was ready for the main roster the second he came in, a Sami Zayn. You had the likes of, you know, I'm trying to think of those names, but like Finn Balor coming in. Do you know what I mean? Like Samoa Joe was there, Bobby Roode. They were all like main roster people. Shinsuke Nakamura. They brought them into NXT first. They didn't need developing. They were already ready. They were the top stars. So like you say, now we've got people like Lash Legend down there, and Carmel Hayes has been on the indie circuit for quite a while. But Bron Breakker, someone that was establishing himself with the WWE ranks, and all these other ones that are coming through now, it feels like it's more developmental in a way. Like I said, we've got those breakup tournaments at the minute, so I suppose we'll see how it will play out. But anything you'd like to add before we move on?
No, yeah, it's bang on what you said. Yeah, it's like it really, because the only interaction we ever got with the main roster back then was Survivor Series, even though that was such a great time. Like the whole 3-way brand split dynamic was amazing. It was just a case of it was like you said there. It's more of a developmental now than it ever was.
Absolutely. Cination then says it was a roll-up. Rey Mysterio won clean, so it was a clean win. The beatdown was after the match. Okay. And we've got, here's the thing then, and making sure that I've got, because the comments come up twice here for me. Here's the thing, John Cena won't show up every week on NXT, so who will they get to get the ratings up? They can't have Judgment Day on NXT forever. True story, but the thing is, John Cena clearly gets to be AEW. That's why John Cena's going down there. There's no other reason.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's going to be the first time since, John Cena was last on NXT, probably close to 10 years ago, something like that. You remember he did, this was when obviously it was all pre-recorded and stuff, and he was on there once. So yeah, it's going to be a shock to see him back there. But like I said, the roster is so varied, man. And like I said, you've got people like, for instance, Kevin Owens, who is NXT through and through. There's no harm in NXT, even going back to NXT for a month. You know what I mean? They have this opportunity to bring people back to the NXT. They should do it, man, and knock it out of the park, because the wrestling is almost a completely different show on NXT. So it gives the wrestlers to do something else, and just like, if they're not being used, why not?
Yeah, it's still WWE, regardless of whether it's developmental. It's still your company. It's still your wrestlers, and if you look at the wrestlers that weren't doing
developmental to learn off of, than the guys that are currently doing it 364 days a year. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, the thing is as well, John Cena goes to NXT next week. Those wrestlers should be going on, sponging. Let's be fair. Same with Cody. You've got people that have been there and done it. But Cody was in the main event of WrestleMania this year. He's going to be there next week. It's like, if you're new and starting out, you're asking questions. You're going to want to get every bit of knowledge out. And look at Becky Lynch right now. Everyone says, why is she NXT Women's Champion? Well, I'll tell you what. She's doing a lot for that brand because more eyes are on it, because Becky Lynch is there with that title. And the second she drops that to someone, they're a ready-made star overnight. Could that be Jade Cargill, or will Jade debut somewhere else? We're talking about Jade in a few minutes' time, so don't worry if you're wanting to know our thoughts about Jade Cargill. But certainly, Tiffany Stratton has benefited from working with Becky Lynch. So it works so many different ways. And that's something Auska versus Roxanne Perez will happen next week as well. Another match I'm really, really looking forward to. So yeah, you can't have those people forever. Like you said, Judgment Day forever. But certainly there are other people on the roster, certainly that could be on there instead. So they've got hundreds of talents that they can play with. Just saying, NXTeve, you were correct a decade ago. It was 2013, so you were correct there. And this says Cody Rhodes not done so much since Brock Lesnar and has lost momentum. I think the momentum's coming back now. I think the Jey Uso storyline is helping it. I think that's what I would say at this particular moment. And Cena does think Jade Cargill should go to NXT, not ready for main roster. When will the next Q&A be? Not entirely sure at the minute, but I must admit the Q&A has took a bit of a break recently. We'll try and make sure they are back more regularly going into the winter season. I want to do at least one a week, so expect them to be coming back more regularly. I do apologize. We've been experimenting with other content, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, but the Q&A will be coming back shortly. In the meantime, NXT, I think we're ready to move on to match 4.
Go for it.
Let's talk about then the women's triple threat match for the women's championship. We've got Io Sky defending against Auska and Charlotte Flair. Of course, Io Sky cashing in successfully at SummerSlam on Bianca Belair, who'd won a triple threat match against, funnily enough, Charlotte Flair and Auska. In the meantime, we've been sort of building to Io versus Charlotte. Well, that was sort of been building in the background, but Auska made her return. We finally got the dream match that we thought we wouldn't get. Io Sky versus Auska on SmackDown last week. Surprised it was SmackDown and not this PLE, but that's a different story for another day. Io Sky winning that match, of course, with the help of Damage Control. And of course, this past week, Charlotte Flair was going to make the challenge, but at the same time winning a match against Bayley at that point. There was a tag team matches, but it was Bayley last week that she beat on SmackDown. And then, of course, Asuka came in to make the save when Damage Control were going to go against Charlotte Flair. Asuka also threw her name in the hat. And, of course, Bayley said, well, we'll defend in a triple threat match, putting her friend pretty much under the bus, of being brutally honest at this point. Bayley perhaps a little bit jealous that Sky is the one leading this group with the championship at the moment.
It's a very good possibility. I mean, it seems to be the way they're throwing it. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that maybe come Friday that Bayley somehow gets herself added to the match as well, and we get a fatal 4-way. I think it's essentially 2-on-1 really, and I think they might want to try and even up the odds. And I think if you try throwing Bayley in there and have it as a fatal 4-way, but almost play it as if Bayley's like, no, don't worry, I'm not going to pin you. I'm going to just help you retain your title kind of thing. And then maybe that's where they go to possibly build, then going on to an Io versus Bayley match. I don't know. But like I said, I think it's going to be a case of a fourth person gets added this Friday.
I like the idea of that. Certainly would be quite interesting if they were to do so, just to mix up a little bit, certainly. And obviously, if I'm sort of going to give my early takes on this, I'm going to give my predictions early on it. I think it's probably the best way to do, because it's kind of like it's I've got things in blocks of how I see it playing out, because I think we've got storylines with this match here playing through to the Royal Rumble. I think we've got, and I'm not going to predict every match along the road. I'm just going to see how it's going to go here. First off, Asuka versus Sky, it's already happened. We've done the match. Did get help, but she won the match, and I think here is going to pin Asuka. I think that leads Asuka out of the championship picture, free to go to NXT to take on Roxanne Perez. We have, in the meantime, Sky versus Charlotte Flair as the next match built. We could say Crown Jewel. Hey, look, I'm going to get my word already. I'm predicting on shows. I think, then will retain there, and I think that's when it leads to potentially War Games, because that's what we do. This is the feud that's working with it, where Bianca Belair will return, and I think we'll get Bianca Belair versus Sky at the Royal Rumble. And I'm going to predict now that it could go either way. It would make sense in one way for Bianca to win the championship, because I think that we could be getting Bianca versus Charlotte at WrestleMania next year. I think that will be the destination. But I also think we're going to get Io versus Bayley at WrestleMania. One of those will be the championship match. I'm just not sure which one it's going to be. But to go that far forward, we have to go to the here and now. I'm predicting Sky retains, wins this match, and pins Asuka in the match. So it puts Asuka to the back of the line.
Yeah, that does sound like it's going to be the most obvious answer. It's what I was going to go for with an Io retain. I mean, I can't see a reason why Asuka or Charlotte would walk out with this title. I think it also gives Io a bit more credibility. The fact that if she can win a triple threat over arguably the greatest women's wrestler of all time at the minute with Charlotte, and then another massive star in Asuka, it's going to do wonders for her. Even just giving her title run some sort of credibility, and it'd be, because let's be honest, it's kind of been this is really of all the matches, this is kind of the least you probably care about, if I'm honest. Despite that, a lot of people might say that the result is really is split three ways, but I think that the story in general has just been I've been so disinterested in this WWE Women's Championship match. It just seems like it's rinse and repeat with Io at the minute, and I think that throwing away a match with Asuka on TV was just one of the stupidest things to do. I know it's hard to book those two in a story angle, because obviously they're not fluent in English. It's really hard to get across it. But hey, I really enjoyed it when they were screaming at each other in Japanese. Thought it was the funniest stuff I'd ever seen. But unfortunately, you don't want it to be funny. You want it to be serious. But yeah, I'm going to go the same with you. I'm going to say that Io retains. I think it's going to be the safest bet. And like I said, for your predictions going into Mania, I think it has to be Bianca Charlotte. I think if you're going to put a title somewhere in the between those two matches.
Perhaps maybe that's where Bayley's jealousy really creeps in, and that's where she doesn't help the scenario. He's willing for her rival to have the title over the person that she's been mentoring for such a long time. That could be something that could play out. But I will just give what I think Asuka will go on to do also. Obviously, the rumors of return of Kairi Sane. I think the Kabuki Warriors will reunite as a tag team, and I think they will be going in either as tag team champions or fighting for the women's tag team champions going into WrestleMania.
Yeah, it just depends on at what point on who has them women's tag team titles, because they are cursed thanks to Kaylee Ray and Isla Dawn. Or sorry, not Kaylee Ray, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn. So yeah, God knows, but yeah, the idea of them being cursed, I think, is genius. But it almost seems like it's true. They are a cursed title.
It is, unfortunately. It's like what the Universal title was for the first few years that it was around. It always seemed to be vacated every few minutes. But you said there were a bit of disinterest. So let's talk about a rumor that's come via PW Insider before we go to our chat, and we can combine everything together. They've suggested, not necessarily on screen, but she'll be there, Jade Cargill. Does she debut at WWE FastLane? Now, we did talk about the idea, obviously, with NXT No Mercy previously. That didn't happen. There has been rumors now going in the rumor mill that she is set to be on the Raw brand. That's where she's meant to be. I'm not sure that's the right move. And here's my reasoning for it. And I can see logic in it, by the way, very quickly, because she could still become NXT Women's Champion. She could still rival with Becky. She could still beat Becky, and she could do Raw and NXT. So there's logic in that side of things. But if you're looking at, like, she's built like a superhero and all the stuff that WWE's portraying, she's had, over 40 million social media hits and stuff like that. So she's main roster bound. She's not going NXT for the long term, if she's going there at all. But if she was to be on SmackDown, I mean, a lot of the matches she's deemed as the dream matches that she wants are on SmackDown for starters. But she could look an imposing person being in the ring with an Io Sky, with an Auska. Obviously, Charlotte Flair is quite tall as well, but Bayley not as tall as Jade Cargill. Shotzi not as tall as Jade Cargill. You have that sort of menacing presence early doors. Is there a chance that she could just be in the crowd, or could she be involved at ringside? What's the scenario? Obviously, we can't take all the reports to be gospel.
It doesn't make sense for her to be in the crowd when the fact that we've got a SmackDown branded title on the line. I think I'm the same as you. At the minute, there's no one on Raw that even comes close to Rhea Ripley's level of challenging. Like, not Nia Jax. Like, Becky's obviously doing her thing in NXT at the minute. Like, Becky is the only other choice. But I think if you want someone as a credible opponent for Rhea Ripley to come up to, who you could turn around and say, do you know what? I can see Rhea losing that title. It's got to be Jade Cargill. It's got to be Raw. It's the only thing for me that makes sense. Like you said, if she goes to SmackDown, she absolutely towers head and shoulders above all of them, except maybe Charlotte. But I think if you're going to have Charlotte versus Jade, that is a money, and that's a main event WrestleMania kind of match there, or even like a Jade versus Bianca. That again, that's a very main event WrestleMania kind of match, and that's something I'd really want to put off for maybe a year and a half till we get to like Mania 41. But yeah, Raw seems to be the only sort of credible option. I mean, the way that they were posting on social media, it was like a football club in the UK. Like, when they sign a player and they post it all over the social media and they do the welcome video and all that, they treated her like she is essentially like the Kylian Mbappe of like women's wrestling. Like, she is the biggest female star as a free agent, and it really felt that way. NXT doesn't make sense at all for her.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree. NXT doesn't make sense. The only issue I have had with her potentially going to Raw is the idea that, I mean, if you're going with this idea of a super imposing, very tall, she's like, that's what they're building her up as. Is she going to stand out when she's on the same roster as a Rhea Ripley, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler? Like, all of a sudden she's sort of, Piper Niven. She's just one of the roster. Does she seem larger than life? That's why I think she would be better on SmackDown.
No, because the fact is that Rhea has absolutely destroyed everyone on the Raw roster. And do you know what I mean? There is literally, apart from Becky, there's no one left. Every time we see someone go up and be like, oh, this is Rhea's next challenger, yeah, you're going to lose. Yeah, you're going to lose. If you bring someone like a Jade Cargill in, like, I no disrespect to any of them, but like when you put Zelina Vega against Rhea Ripley in a pay-per-view match in Puerto Rico, as much as she is the home star there, she's going to lose because it's Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley is just like this dominant force. And it's a case of you need someone who is a dominant force, if not a bigger dominant force, to come in and put Rhea in her place. And Jade Cargill could do that, and it would be a massive shock. I mean, like I said, there's no one on Raw at the minute apart from Becky that can beat Rhea. So what else are you going to do? You're just going to keep having a squash Nia Jax every week, have a squash Raquel Rodriguez. All you're doing is further burying the Raw women's division. You need someone new. You need someone fresh, someone who can come in and do the job and take that title off of Rhea. And that name is Jade Cargill.
Interesting stuff. Well, we'll see what it's going to be. I mean, the rumors suggest, I think it's PW, so it suggests she'll be on Raw. I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think she debuts here, but I don't think she debuts in ring. I think that what they're
Sit
going to
in
do
the
with her,
crowd like
she'll
NXT
sit in
used
the
to do.
crowd. Yes, but I think it's going to be done slightly different, not just one show. I think she's going to sit in multiple shows. I think that she's going to be scouting SmackDown, scouting Raw, and
NXT, Raw,
yeah, she could be everywhere watching what's going on, simply just being there, kind of like what we saw with All In with Mercedes Moné just sitting in the audience in Wembley Stadium. You know, when you think to yourself, I bought the wrong ticket, she's sitting on the other side of the stadium. But you know, but at the same time you sit and think to yourself that could be the way forward, because all of a sudden everyone wants Jade Cargill on their show. Where is she going to go? That could lead to that sort of question to everybody.
Because then all it causes is for Rhea to have a really bad week where someone loses the title, for instance, like Dom loses the NXT North American title again. She comes out on Raw. Jade just happens to be sitting in the front row, and then Rhea in a peed off from imagination just standing and goes, "You, Jade Cargill, when are you ever actually going to get in here and wrestle?" And then, do you know what I mean? And it, boom, you go from there. And like, yeah, I'm gassed. I'm super excited for when she actually does it, man. Like, I like your idea. Just have her turn up every show, sit in the crowd every show, man. Whenever there's a women's match on, boom, Jade Cargill is sitting there. All she's doing is scouting talent. And like every single time.
I think it could be interesting. Certainly for big high-profile championship matches, I think certainly would be the perfect way to do it. Absolutely. We'll see how it's going to play out, but certainly, as a final call, NXTeve, yes or no, Jade Cargill this weekend at Fastlane?
Will she turn up? Yeah, I think she will. I think like it's only so long you can do it. I say yes, but then again, let me just be honest. Fastlane isn't exactly a WrestleMania or a Survivor Series or a SummerSlam, so it might be a no. It might be what the case if they're waiting for a bigger show.
We'll have to wait and see. But perhaps it could be the Fastlane to success for Jade Cargill. I had to get it in there somewhere. So let's go into the comments then. And WrestleMania has heard rumors that Jade Cargill will join the Raw roster, not NXT. PW Inside did suggest that. WrestleBoom here saying that predicting Io Sky will win. Numiko, another faction breakup storyline, is also a waste of time. Damage Control should have broke up at Survivor Series or at WrestleMania 39. They've gone on strong. They've carried on since, and they've got back on track for the meantime. But the breakup will happen at some point, potentially could even be at WrestleMania 40. WrestleBoom suggesting that we could get, I believe that's meant to be the triple threat there, Bayley, Io, and Dakota at WrestleMania 40. In fact, it is actually is said there in the second comment. C Nation says Asuka's been losing a lot lately. It does seem to be the case, but hopefully they get things in place for Auska. And as Noob says here, most likely at the big matches, that seems to be when Auska tends to lose them. I expect she would beat Roxanne Perez on Tuesday. We see a returning Kairi Sane. Could be against her, not just a partner. That could be a suggestion as well. The Noob certainly got something there. C Nation says that Chelsea Green and Piper Niven having a terrible title reign. Well, I think Chelsea Green's carrying the load there. Piper Niven's not been fully cleared the whole time, so it's probably another one of those where it's not going quite right there. Katana Chance, Kaden Carter being treated like jobbers on the main roster. I don't think I remember the last time I've seen them, NXTeve. I don't know about you.
I think I saw a TikTok the other day from Katana Chance. I think that was the last I saw of them.
There we go. You can find them on TikTok, not even on Raw. Nubico says Jade Cargill going to be on the Raw roster because I believe Bianca should be a WrestleMania 40 match. It certainly feels like a WrestleMania type match there. Speaking of football club in the UK, I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham as of late. Hope you're enjoying that, Nubico. Thank you for sharing with us. A big football club, UK football, soccer if we have to do it for the States. But yes, we're big fans, NXT and myself. But I've not seen Welcome to Wrexham yet. It's something I'm looking forward to checking out at some point. Have you seen it?
I haven't. No, dude. There's so much TV to watch nowadays, man, and I just don't have enough time. And it's like if I go to watch something, I have to commit to it and watch it all. And just having the time to watch one show continuously is just the thought of it is just really jarring at the minute.
It's actually so much wrestling. That's also the thing. There's so much wrestling to keep up with.
It's true.
Also, I believe Roxanne Perez might help Asuka in the triple threat match, and that could somehow turn heel permanently. Interesting with that idea there, because Roxanne was booed on NXT this week. I can't think why. I like Roxanne. C-Nation says Jade Cargill should be the person to take the NXT Women's Championship off of Becky Lynch. Now that may not happen. It still could. Both being on Raw, they still could make up an Indy Hartwell turn up as well on NXT this past week. Everyone's going to NXT. It's an open door policy.
That was after their interaction on Raw on Monday, wasn't it? That was pointless.
Absolutely. Poor Tegan Knox, although she's eventually going to get her match. In our opinion, which AEW wrestler will be signed to WWE after Jade Cargill? WrestleBoom thinks Wardlow or Ricky Starks. I think both are great suggestions. I'm going to say that I think it will be Ricky Starks.
Ricky Starks is my bet as well. I think that that guy is like that's like little Cody there, man. That guy is going to follow Cody to the end of the earth, man.
Absolutely. And the thing is, as well, he did say how proud he was of Jade there, showed his happiness as well online there. And he was backstage at the Rumble with Cody this year. I think BWE suggested it's a 75% chance. I'm gonna. It's opinion based, but I'm putting it up in the 90s column. Unless Ricky Starks is like AEW World Champion by the time that contract's up, I think he's going.
Yeah, I mean, you would have thought they'd have pushed him to the moon as an enticement to keep him, but he just seems to get to a point where he gets really hot, and then that's it. It's just AEW booking for you. They get them to a point where they're really hot, and then they just don't know what to do with them once they get to that point.
Absolutely. Sination says Dirty Dominic Mysterio has outstayed his welcome in NXT. He should have left after No Mercy. People are saying that Rhea Ripley threatened Dirty Dominic Mysterio, but who cares? It creates more tension. It does create more tension. That's always what's quite fun about it. But Dom has overcome it for now. Keeps the Judgment Day together for another day. And obviously, they've got War Games, we assume, coming up. Sination says, why is Shayna Baszler back in the tag team? She beat Ronda at SummerSlam and then goes back to being a tag team with Zoe Stark. Your guess is as good as mine, but if I had to put some speculation stations, Sination, just take it with a pinch of salt coming out my mouth now, but that Ronda match wasn't well received to my knowledge, and yeah, I think that pretty much is the reason why the push was never coming for Baszler. It was doing Ronda the favor on the way out, and I think that's pretty much it. But Zoe Stark and Shayna Baszler for me is actually a decent tag team. I don't mind the idea, although would have preferred Trish and Zoe to have continued, but Trish is no longer around, so I'm guessing that's why they did the breakup there.
Yeah, I think if anything, Zoe's going to be the one to benefit of it, just because Zoe gets more TV time, and I think that's the way they're going at the minute. I think Shayna's going to have to reinvent herself somehow and do something or other. But yeah, Shayna's not going anywhere at the minute. She just seems to be floundering.
Yeah. Hopefully they'll work it out for one. But I think just as we talked about Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley's came up recently as well, Nia Jackson, all the rest of them. I do think we could be getting a fatal four-way crown jewel of Rhea, Shayna, Raquel, and Nia, unless it's just Rhea versus Nia. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the four-way at this moment. But we'll move on then. We have one more match to talk about. It is for the World Heavyweight Championship. It is a last man standing match. It is Seth freaking Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura. I suppose where to begin with this one. I guess Payback probably is the place. We knew Shin, after his heel turn was strategically done, knew the problems with Seth's back. They had a fantastic match at Payback. And of course, once Seth won their match, Shinsuke thought, not having that. Beat down Seth on the same night, knowing that on Raw, Seth would want revenge, to the point that Seth wants a match with Shinsuke so bad he was willing to give a rematch for the title. Shinsuke declined. Wanted another match the next week. Shinsuke declined. And then said, well, you can pick the time and you can pick the place and you can pick the stipulation. So all the cards then were finally given to Nakamura. Nakamura done attacks as well with steel chairs. I was wondering if it would turn to TLC like we originally predicted after Payback. But no, it was last man standing because, well, Seth can't always get up. No, man can't stand up. If his back keeps getting attacked, he's having trouble getting up every time. So it does make sense to the storyline narrative. And we saw this past week on Raw after the CM Punk teases with Seth Rollins with that puppet segment that was done with Michael Cole. We did see Shinsuke Nakamura beat down Seth Rollins to the point that he would continue beating down Seth until he couldn't get up for the count of 10. Steel chairs being used on the back as well, along with the King's Shusser. Personally, for me, first and foremost, still loving the presentation of Shinsuke Nakamura. Win, lose, or draw here, this needs to be Nakamura moving forward for every feud he does, because personally, I find that the presentation is different to anybody else in the roster. He's unique now in his own format, makes his matches a lot more exciting to look forward to. And I think there's some exciting matches that heel Nakamura could have on Monday Night Raw.
Absolutely. I mean, he's essentially anime villain at this point. Like, yeah, the way he's been presented, even the last match that they had, the way that they were using the cartoon graphic and the very like sort of anime style presentation of him, just phenomenal. Everything you said, spot on there. He's unique once again, and he's doing, like, they have the ability to do something really good with him. Like, he's got a really interesting persona now, really interesting characteristics, and it's a case of, it's not just that he's got new music with some guy rapping over the top of it instead of it's to stop the crowd from singing along. Do you know what I mean? Because essentially that was his last heel turn, was what can we do to make him look or present differently? Oh, I know, we'll change his music. Doesn't do anything for him. So yeah, man, like I said, hopefully still living on the dream that maybe we get a really, really good, like, New Japan style match, like a hard hitting, strong style match, and just absolutely watch him take it to Seth Rollins, man. Because this is going to be great. I think story wise, this has got the best build to it. I'm really psyched to see what they do with it, and like, without giving the result away, I'm really excited to see what happens at the end.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the big question I'm going to ask here, because they've suggested WWE this is like a double main event. This show, obviously, this match along with John Cena L.A. Knight versus the Bloodline, they're the two main events of this show. So, what match goes on last? Does this match go on earlier in the show, or is this the main event?
Oh no, this has to be the main event, dude. It's the world title. This is that same argument again, where people turn around and say this title needs to have prestige of it, and it's like we was literally talking. What was we doing? Was we doing a No Mercy, the No Mercy quiz the other day, when it was like AJ Styles going on first in a match for the WWE Championship? Doesn't make sense. World title, main event.
I can't argue with that. I really cannot argue. And I think that that's good logic and good point made there. And I'm not going to go against it. Seth freaking Rollins, then, the back is being played more and more into storyline. It's affecting him more and more each and every week. How long does this title reign last? Because it feels like he is becoming more and more vulnerable. And if he does get through Shin, he may have to go through a Damian Priest, or he may have to go through other challengers. What happens here with Rollins? Is there enough steam left in the tank for him to hold this title until Royal Rumble WrestleMania season?
See, this is the interesting thing here, because obviously Damian Priest exists as a possibility. If it ends at Fastlane, Priest, I don't think Priest is going to cash in till at least past Rumble. I think if they're going to give this title to Nakamura, Nakamura has to have a solid run, a consistent run, pick up some strong wins, have a decent run with the world title. If Seth retains, then it just opens up a plethora of possibilities for Priest to cash in at some point, even possibly at Fastlane. So who knows, really? Like, again, it'll be if Seth, let me get my words out now because I'm tired and shattered. If Seth retains, it's essentially just a ticking time bomb, and when Priest will most likely cash in and take that title off of him.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I feel like this is, if they're going to do Priest, it's not going to be around WrestleMania season. I feel so. It's kind of like now is the time. If they want to experiment, it's a good time to do it now. We got football season. Yes, NFL season's come back in the last few weeks, so that gives people an excuse to blame ratings on other things rather than with the Monday Night Football and stuff. So you could give Priest a month with the title and see how it goes, or you wait until after WrestleMania, which is something we've not seen for a very, very long time. WWE usually gets the briefcase off people as quickly as possible, so Priest could even be someone that could cash in at next year's Money in the Bank at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they left it that long. So my feeling with it is that I am going to agree with you. I don't think he's going to cash in on this show, Priest, although I think there's a possibility that he should. I don't think he's going to. I think Seth is going to find a way to get through this. But what I would say quickly, although I've now just given my prediction, I think Seth is going to win it. Nakamura is so over with this character right now. And if there was a time that Nakamura was ever going to win a title, they could experiment with it now, because I feel like Nakamura, the time feels right for me. And if you want to move on to different challengers, Sami Zayn and KO are right there.
And this is why, for me, I'm going to say Nakamura wins. I think the fact that he lost the last one, and the fact that we've got this whole dynamic of a last man standing, I have to say Nakamura wins. I'm going to go against it. I think Seth had a great run with the title, but I think it's time to freshen it up. Either way, I don't see Seth walking out of it come Saturday night. I reckon it'll either be Priest, or more favorably, I hope it's Nakamura. I really hope Nakamura gets this win. I think he deserves this time. The good thing with Priest is that every time we get around to a PLE, we sit there and we have this same thing. We turn around and say, do you know what? It'd be a good chance for him to cash in tonight. It'd be a good chance to and that's what's really exciting about Priest at the minute, is that he still is unpredictable, and the fact that whenever they're going to pull that trigger, we're going to keep saying it now up until the point that he actually does it. But yeah, for me, I'm going to go Nakamura. I think Nakamura has earned the right to have a run with the world title. And like you said, the amount of people that are on the Raw roster that he can have matches with, Kevin, Sammy, anyone, man, even like, well, I wouldn't say Cody. You want to keep him obviously away from it. But there's a load of options there for him going forward.
If because you've gone with Nakamura, and I obviously went with Seth, but I still don't rule out a third match between these two because I can't think where Seth goes from here, and that's a struggle for me in my mind. Where does Seth go next? Unless it's Drew. Unless it's Drew. Could you see, obviously, if Nakamura wins, they would be entitled for a rematch for Seth. Could you see them doing one more match at Crown Jewel? Because it kind of would make sense in a way, because this feud has been going on for 2 months already. Obviously, KO and Sammy were at the last Saudi show, but there's no telling they'll be at this one. So, I mean, could you see him doing this one more time?
I honestly don't think so. I think that the match stipulation alone is perfect enough for this to be the finale, because I think this is now going to be a case for they're going to write Seth off for a couple of months. I think that they need to take Seth off, have him come back at, I don't know, Rumble, for example, because it's, you know what I mean, it's round about that time of the year where obviously if you're going to write someone off, now's the perfect time. Rumble's only a couple of months away. Have him come out, I don't know, at that point, hopefully have Nakamura lose the title by, say, Rumble. Then they're both, Nakamura's in the ring in the Rumble. Seth comes out. We get the reigniting of the rivalry, and then we get the third match out of it. I think we need to even up the score. Let Nakamura take that title. Seth then comes back. We then get the third match. We get the decider, and then Seth goes on to win that title again against whoever is the champion at the time, whether it be Drew or whoever.
Interesting indeed there. Well, I'll tell you what, ladies and gents, that's our thoughts of it anyway. We're going to go in the comments and see what everyone else thinks of it, and then obviously we'll wrap the stream up. But just quickly, before we do go to those final comments, all we will say is quickly, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, share it with a friend, and of course, subscribe as well. It really does help this channel a long way. So without further ado, WrestleBoom says, predicting that Seth Rollins will win. Also, we have Seth versus Gunther, champion versus champion match at Crown Jewel. Let's hope it's not a unification match, but certainly is a big time match that certainly would want to see some point further down the line. CD saying, look, Shinsuke made a big mistake. A lot of wrestlers have done this, and he's touched the goal before the show. It gives you bad luck, and that is very true. And that's why the reason I agree. I think it's going to be, and I agree with CD again here. He says that, sorry, but John Cena L.A. versus the Bloodline is going to main event the show. I agree with NXSteve that the World Heavyweight title should main event. I don't think he will. I think this match is going to main event. And this is what I will say. This is also why I don't think Priest is going to cash in, because I think Seth versus Nakamura could potentially even open the show. That's going to be my potential feeling there. But
please don't do this to me, Steve. And I can't be having a World Heavyweight title open a show, man. It doesn't make sense. Like, I know John Cena is like obviously one of the biggest draws on the card, but yeah, do you know the worst part is you're absolutely right. You look at it, LA Knight, one of the hottest commodities they've got in a minute. John Cena, the debatable GOAT of all time. Do you know what I mean? They are going to main event. You can just see it, man. It's such a shame, man. Like I don't know. It's just one of the things I'm going to get annoyed about now until Saturday when I finally see what happens.
Well, here's the other thing quickly, just to talk about match order, actually, because I said for open match, I actually don't think that works either, actually, because there's 3 tag team matches on this show. So there's only 5 matches currently. Yeah, they don't tend to do tag team match after tag team match. So I think you're probably looking at Judgment Day, Cody Jade could open. You're probably looking at the maybe the 6-man tag match goes second or something, because it's just no one cares about it.
You'd have to do the women's match, then the 6-man, then the world title, and then they finish on this. There's too many tag team matches for once.
Well, one question I was going to ask, actually, there's surely going to be a 6-match added. What match do you think will be added if they could add another match?
The fact that Gunther versus Ciampa is on SmackDown makes me angry. The fact that this should be on the pay-per-view is, I think, absolutely outrageous. The fact that we've got one of possibly the greatest NXT champions of all time and the greatest Intercontinental champion of all time, and the IC title is being resorted to being on SmackDown, I think is an absolute joke. Oh, sorry, on Raw, yeah, I think is an absolute travesty. I think how you couldn't have put this on the card, is unbelievable. And the fact that we've got a 6-man tag match with no, like, there's not, like, yeah, okay, it's got some sort of build to it, but you're dropping the IC title from the card is just outrageous.
Yeah, I mean, the timing can be the only thing. They had got like 20 minutes, didn't they, on Raw, something like that. They got a good set of time for that main event match on Monday night. But I agree with you, it would have been awesome to have seen that on this show. I think if you're going to add another match to the show, add two that come to mind because you've got a lot of the big time players already on this show, and it's a B level pay per view. I don't expect them to announce, like, I don't know. I mean, they could do Drew McIntyre versus The Miz, but no, don't do that. I can see it being like Shotzi versus Bailey, or I can see DIY versus Imperium. Those are the two matches I can see at the moment. But it's another tag team match, which makes me think that's not going to happen. So
unless it's on the kickoff show, that's the only thing I can think of is they add it to the kickoff show.
I expect SmackDown to get the other match.
Yeah, but then it's like, how do you sit there and add Imperium versus DIY to the kickoff show, but yet Gunther can't even make the main show? It wouldn't make sense, unfortunately. No. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on there, but yeah, I'll be honest with you, I think they're going to stick with the 5. I think if you've got 3 hours and there's some real time to play out and some real time to have some really good story narrative driven matches there.
Absolutely. Well, let's go into the comments then, and it's Q&A for, well, say Q&A for me. It's a wrapping up the comments we've got, because we're nearly an hour and a half into the stream, and I've got to be awake in 5 hours. So, yeah, we'll go through the rest of the comments, and then we'll wrap things up. WrestleRoom says, hot take, Drew McIntyre and KO heel turn. I think that Shinsuke, Bronson Reed, and Damian Priest will turn face. There we go. It's a prediction there from WrestleBoom. And it may be WWE's booking, but Shayna Baszler's tag team partner Ronda Rousey left WWE, and Zoe Stark's tag team partner Trish is taking a break. So let's pair these together. Classic WWE. WrestleBoom says, do you guys think the KO and Sammy tag team championship reign was good or great? Neither. I think it was a bit mid, personally.
I think it started off well and then died towards the end of it, unfortunately. I think injuries were the biggest problem with that.
I would agree. Injuries are what harmed it. I would think it was fine up until the injury came in, and then it kind of scuppered it a little bit. And it could have ended a bit prematurely, but certainly was a great matchup when they did lose those tag team titles. If they have a rematch, it should be a Crown Jewel Hell in a Cell match. I'm guessing that is Seth and Shinsuke. Hell in a Cell match. Been a while since we've seen one of those. Wouldn't be against that at all. And also it'd be painful as well. Can you get up on it after a Hell in a Cell match? Which match are we most looking forward to? As we said at the start of the stream, for me, it was the Jade and Cody versus the Judgment Day tag team match, and I believe NXTsteve, yours was the world title
Seth
match
versus Nakamura. Yeah, I think, like I said, it's got the most story-driven narrative coming out of it, and like I said, I'm just praying for a Nakamura win, really. I think more than anything.
Absolutely. Sination does remind us, it does go on to say 2023, by the way, that the World Heavyweight Championship match where it was crowned was Night of Champions was the opener of that show as well. WrestleRoom says that if Shinsuke doesn't dethrone Seth Rollins, then it should be either Bron Breakker, Drew, Priest, or Randy Orton. It was quite a few contenders there for Seth after all. And final comment,
hey man, if they're gonna make Bron Breakker a Paul Heyman guy, I'm really excited for that. That looks amazing.
I would not be against that, but it does feel weird while he's with the Bloodline, but certainly afterwards, yes. WrestleBoom says, final comment, Gunther versus Tommaso Ciampa doesn't happen at Fastlane. It's just crazy. Agreed in there, WrestleBoom, with you, NXSteve. So that's all the comments wrapped up there for us for WWE FastLane 2023. Obviously, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button, share with a friend as well, and subscribe. And yeah, honestly, it's hopefully it'll be a fun one this weekend. Let's see how it's going to play out. But NXSteve, I want to say a massive thank you to you for joining in once again. And yeah, any final words, thoughts, anything you'd like to add before we finish up?
You let me down. I'm now having to do a rewind on Bailey versus Sasha. You're not in my good books, okay? Now go on to the next poll on the SCW channel and vote for my choice for a pay-per-view rewind. You've upset me, all right?
You've got 24 hours to do so, and NXT, so that's not looking good. It's looking like we could be going back into NXT Black and Gold territory, but Halloween Havoc is one vote behind. Of course, the other ones are NXT's choice, my underrated pay-per-views, and In Your House are the options. Go to the community tab while you still can. You've got 24 hours to do so, and then, of course, the poll of the shows will go out on Friday. So NXT, should yours do a big turnaround, he'll have 4 pay-per-views ready for you on Friday. But yeah, that's all from us anyway. I'm looking to try and get another video out tomorrow if possible. But if not, maybe Friday will be more likely. And of course, towards the end of the week, we'll look to do a Fast Lane review show, which hopefully might be able to get NXSteve on the show with us once again. I'll talk to him off air to make a confirmation with that. But that's all from us anyway. Thank you for watching. Thank you to our chat and for everyone getting involved. As always, you've all been awesome. Look after yourselves and each other. Enjoy Fast Lane. Take care. And yeah, we're off to the Fast Lane now. For me, it's Fast Lane to sleep. Take care.